Hello, U.S. history students. So, in this lesson, we're going to talk about the U.S. entering World War II. Now, in our first lesson, we talked about three separate pathways to war. Okay, we talked about the European theater or the Atlantic theater and the actions of Hitler there. He's becoming increasingly militaristic. He's taking over territory, and eventually the Allies say enough's enough. And in 1939, they go to war with Germany over Poland. Okay. Then we talked about the increasing aggressiveness of Japan in Asia. Remember, Japan wants to dominate Asia, it wants to be the predominant um, economic power and military power in Asia, and how it's getting aggressive invading China and Manchuria, and how we're disturbed by that. And that's going to lead us to the third part here is our entry into the war. And we mentioned it a little bit in the last lesson. We mentioned briefly Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor is going to bring us into the war officially. But more importantly, we talked about the fact that for the first 2 years of World War II, the United States is neutral. So, in this presentation, we're going to look at the pathway that we take to get involved in World War II. And it is a very complex and complicated pathway. I think a lot of people assume, oh, it was Pearl Harbor, and then boom, we're in the war. But the story is a little bit more fuller than that. Now, as we go through this presentation, feel free to take your own notes if you want to. Use the worksheet that I've uploaded on Canvas. That might help you keep track of everything that's going on as we walk down this pathway to World War II. Okay, so let's talk about U.S. entry into World War II. Now, again, as we've talked about, the United States, for the first 2 years of the war, claims to be neutral. Okay, but as you can see here from these pictures, that's not quite the full story. All right. The U.S. has agreed to give Britain war supplies in exchange for military bases in Bermuda and the Caribbean. Okay. Now, does this sound like we're being neutral? Okay. Here we are once again giving supplies to our friend Britain, who's definitely on the Allied side. And in this case, we're getting military bases in Bermuda and in the Caribbean. So even though we claim to be neutral, is that the impression that the world is getting? Then, on top of that, we increase our own spending on defense. Okay, some of the pictures I showed just a second ago, we start stockpiling weapons, we start stockpiling ammunition, we start building tanks, we start outfitting a navy, outfitting an air force. Okay, we're going to start increasing our own military spending. And since we've got all this new material, we need somebody to use that new material. So we instate the draft, okay, or selective service. We start calling men up for military duty. Now, I want to show you this picture back here, okay? Notice, take a look at this picture right here. Who's in this picture? That's right, a variety of people. We got African Americans, we've got white people, okay? We've got Hispanic people, Indian people are in here as well. One of the other presentations we're going to look at is minority contributions to World War II. And this picture, coupled with this fact that we have reinstated the draft, lets you know that we are calling everybody up for service in the United States. Okay? So we've been helping Britain out. We're increasing our spending. We're increasing the draft. We're increasing the amount of people in the military. Churchill, who is the Prime Minister of Great Britain, meets with our President, FDR. And we sign what is called the Lend-Lease Act. Now, the Lend-Lease Act basically says that we can lend supplies to countries who are fighting against the Axis powers. Okay, we can either lend them supplies or they can rent them from us. That's the lease part. Okay, they can give us money if they want. But if you are actively fighting the Axis powers, we will help you out. Now, again, FDR's got a great quote here. He says, "It's like lending a garden hose to a next door neighbor whose house is on fire. Now, what does he mean by that? Well, if your neighbor's house is on fire, the garden hose is going to help out a little bit, okay? Any water fighting the fire is good. But is it going to really put the fire out? Probably not. You're going to need something more substantial. So while lending supplies to the allies that are fighting the Axis powers is a good thing, is it going to be enough to stop them? Probably not. We're going to need to do something else. We're going to need more of a commitment from us. Okay, this is what FDR is getting at in this quote. The other thing that happens, and notice this is in August 1941, this Atlantic Charter. The Atlantic Charter establishes the Allied nations, which are 26 nations with common war goals. And you could see from that previous picture there, it's signed in August 1941. And whose name appears on it besides Churchill's? Roosevelt's. So we are a part of this Atlantic Charter. Now, again, our official position is that we are neutral. But all this stuff has been happening. And just like in World War I, the question becomes, are we really neutral, though? I think the answer is no. And then, well, one more thing. Got pictures of U-boats there. Who uses U-boats? Germany. We remember unrestricted warfare or unrestricted submarine warfare from World War I. Roosevelt allows the Navy to attack German submarines. Okay, we remember that from World War I. So again, we're claiming we're neutral, but we've done all of these things that are clearly benefiting one side over the other. And then it happens. You can see pictures here. Okay, you know what's coming. It's the USS Shaw, okay, damaged while floating in dry dock at Pearl Harbor. Here's men working on the Oklahoma at Pearl Harbor. The Japanese lead a surprise air attack at our naval base in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii on December 7th, 1941. Now, some of our ships were out, okay, but still the damage is horrendous. 21 of our ships in the Pacific Fleet are completely destroyed. That's a significant number, okay? It's not as bad as it could have been, but it's a significant number. It's going to take us a while to recoup those losses. And 2,403 American lives have been killed. The next day, President Roosevelt addresses Congress, and he says, December 7th, 1941, a date that will live in infamy. And he goes on to talk about this unprovoked attack from the Empire of Japan. Now, while it's true, we weren't doing anything against Japan, but remember, we'd put an embargo on Japan. We'd spoken out against Japan because of their aggressiveness in Asia. We had taken steps to cut off oil and steel and iron supplies to Japan. Japan's upset by that. Japan's on the Axis side. We're claiming we're neutral, but we've been doing this stuff before, okay? So the question that some historians have asked, Roosevelt gets up there and talks about this unprovoked attack. Is it unprovoked or not? It's a good question. There are going to be some people that say no. But the point is, he calls it a date that will live in infamy, and he asks Congress for a declaration of war. And Congress will give him that declaration, okay? We will declare war on Japan. Notice that. We will declare war on Japan. Japan attacked us. But Japan's on the Axis side. So the day after we declare war on Japan, Germany and Italy declare war on us. And now we are no longer neutral. And once again, things have escalated. The world is truly at war. No more isolationism for us. No more neutrality for us. World War II is truly a world war, and now we are fully involved. And now the question we have to ask ourselves is, who do we go after first? Do we go after Japan because Japan attacked us? Or do we go after Germany and Italy? Where's the more pressing need? And that's going to be a big debate. And there's a lot of people in the country that want us to go to Japan first because they're the one that attacked us. But these questions are going to be answered in a presentation we're going to have later this week on World War II strategy. Okay, so stay tuned. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in that strategy for World War II. Now, be sure you go back through, be sure you review these notes. We got a little quiz on U.S. entry into World War II, or actually the questions dealing with U.S. entry into World War II are on the quiz on the beginning of the war. So be sure you review this material and then take that quiz on the beginning of World War II.